Thank you, Saku, and thank you to the HundrED team. It's a real pleasure to be here and see all your faces here this morning. My name's May. I'm from San Francisco, but I'm actually originally Australian, and I'm super excited to be here today to share a little story with you, a story of how, as an organization, High Resolves, we have taken on the lofty ambition of scaling quality citizenship education to millions of students across the entire world. Before we get to this question of scale, I want to kind of zoom out and focus a little bit about the High Resolve story and what it is that we really do. Now, here we can see 3 images of violence and disturbances on the streets. And I guess encourage you to think about where you think this violence might be occurring. Now, as we can see, the violence is actually from 3 very distinct corners of the globe. The first is in Tehran, Iran, the birthplace of my mom and dad, where they used to call home. And after the 1979 Islamic Revolution, my maternal grandfather actually spent 5 years in prison due to his religious beliefs. And as a Baha'i today, I can't visit Iran without fear of my safety. The second photo is in Charlottesville, after the white supremacy rally in 2018. Charlottesville is in Virginia in the USA. It's actually the place that my parents called their second home after they left Iran. And then on third, you see Melbourne in Australia. Now, Australia is where I was born. It's where my mom and dad now call home. And as you can see, even in safe Australia, we have violence on the streets related to racism and religious disturbances. So what do these 3 images really tell us? Well, what they tell us is that, unfortunately, hatred, bigotry, oppression, prejudice are universal afflictions, and they're not bound to one place or one time. So given the state of the world today, High Resolves came to be as an organization about 15 years ago, and we came together to really tackle these problems head on by focusing on the young generation, seeing the beautiful voices just this morning of what young people can achieve. And our mission is really to inspire a generation of young people who have the intent, the skills, the vision, the creativity and confidence to act in humanity's long-term collective interests. Now, this is a lofty ambition, and we recognize as an organization that it's really necessary that we reach critical mass. It's not enough to just change the hearts and minds of a few people. So our answer to how we do this is really through citizenship education. High Resolves were leaders in the design and delivery of learning experiences which allow young people to go on a journey and develop these 8 competencies that you see listed here. Everything from effective collaboration to social justice and independent thinking. And we believe that citizenship education should be and can be taught as rigorously as we teach math and literacy and science. And at High Resolves, we've adopted what we call the mastery formula, which is really inspired by the best insights from learning science and the work of Dr. Bror Saxberg at the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative that really tell us in order to have mastery, in order to learn something really effectively, we need to take our students through 3 main types of experiences. The first is this peak experience, an aha moment that really changes the way someone thinks about a particular issue. Then we need to take students through repeated practices where they can actually take what's in their working memory into long-term memory, and then give them the chance to have real-world application. Take what they've learned in the classroom and put it into practice. And most importantly, through things like project-based learning. This mastery formula is really what leads to this long-term behavior change that's going to change the world. So we have a formula. How are we taking it to millions of students around the world? As an organization that's been around about 15 years, we started humbly in 1 school in Australia. We're now in 400 schools across the world. We've expanded to North America, Brazil, China. But the reality is we've only reached about 300,000 young people. My CEO would probably not be very happy with me using the words only, but it is really a tip of the iceberg in terms of the number of young people out there in the world. And so if we want to have generational change, large-scale critical mass, we need to do more with others. It's not enough to just operate within our own organizational bounds. Now, the good news is, as we look around, there are actually many amazing and inspiring and quality citizenship education curriculum providers out there. You might recognize a few of these logos, big names like the Anti-Defamation League, who have been around for almost a century, Facing History and Ourselves, who've been around for 40 years, post-Holocaust. And we realize that not only are there many organizations, but increasingly, they have a growing appetite to actually collaborate. And that given the nature of the collective action problems in our world today, collective action solutions are needed. What's really inspiring is that despite being in a sector, the nonprofit sector, where actually collaboration doesn't happen as often as we'd like to see, given this idea of competition for limited funding, we see citizenship education providers recognizing that given the gravity of the problems facing our world, we can't go at it alone and we must come together. And so as an organization, we've really drawn on two main approaches to collaboration: strength of numbers and number of strengths. I'm going to run through a couple of examples of how we've done this. So the first is really the strength in numbers approach. As an organization, we recognize that there's a power in bringing together like-minded organizations who traditionally are fighting for small pieces of pie and not looking to really grow the pie. But the amazing thing is that there's huge synergies to be gained when you can bring together like-minded organizations. So at High Resolves, we brought together the 5 leading organizations in the citizenship education space. We selected them based on their commitment to excellence. And what we did is we really sat together around the table, we brainstormed together, shared together, and imagined the possibilities together. And what we asked ourselves is, what if schools could actually access quality content from across the entire world? Access all of this content in one digital platform that would be free for teachers to use. And from this thought experiment and collaboration, a platform known as The Composer was born. It's a digital platform that allows schools to search for, create, and coordinate sequences of learning experiences for citizenship education. It's inspired by learning science, and teachers can access it from anywhere around the world. And as you can see, this is a Google-inspired search result page. Teachers can find sequences of learning experiences, combining curriculum from all different providers. A teacher who's interested in media literacy for their class, for example, can find a particular learning sequence that draws content from News Literacy Project, High Resolves, Let It Ripple, and the list goes on. And there's even a design interface here where a teacher can drag and drop curriculum that they've found and string it together and get real-time feedback as to the robustness of the curriculum they're creating. Now, this is a super exciting project, and it started with 5 providers. We've now expanded to 20, and our goal is to launch this platform to the public in March 2020 with at least 30 providers. And this is one major way we're scaling to the masses. The second way that we're scaling is through this idea of number of strengths. So what happens when you bring very different players with different strengths and capacities around the table to collaborate in a way that they would have never before? Project Amplify is an example of how we're doing this. So we were really lucky earlier this year as an organization to meet representatives from 2 organizations, Cinepolis and Teach for All. Now, Cinepolis is the 2nd largest provider of auditoriums for cinemas around the world, and Teach for All, many of you would have heard of. They have networks of schools and teachers and associates. By partnering with these 2 organizations, we were able to consider how can we take High Resolve's curriculum to the rest of the world. There are many young people in the world like Emma, Greta, Malala, and Duan whose voices need to be heard, who have the ability to really impact grassroots change, but they need to be able to access the curriculum to do this. So what we did is we built this global alliance of unlikely players coming together. We take students to a cinema to watch a film, to have a peak experience. Teach for All associates are then trained in High Resolve's curriculum. They take these students through this sequence, and then students have the opportunity to create a 1-minute social justice video that inspires their communities to create change. And all this is done in a way that's very, very collaborative. Project Amplify is an example of bringing together unlikely players, the three at the top I've referred to, but we've also brought together Boston Consulting Group, World Bank, and Participant Media, for example, to amplify the impact that we're having beyond this initial experiment that's undertaken in Mexico. So 2 examples I've shown you of Composer and Amplify. What are the quick lessons we can learn from collaboration in order to scale quality to millions? Well, the first thing we've really learned as an organization is that when you're bringing like-minded people together, you need to build a sense of collective identity. These are organizations that might not be used to collaborating or might not understand their role or purpose in this new entity. And it's important to set a vision, set a mission, and make sure everyone's aligned. And secondly, we need to focus on amplifying strengths. When we do have success in bringing like-minded or different organizations under one umbrella, we want to make sure that we're allowing each organization to do what they do best, to allow them to shine. For example, at High Resolves, we know we're good at bringing different organizations around the table, and so we focus on that strength. Other providers might be really good at curriculum development and those squares that I showed you, so we let them focus on those strengths. At the end of the day, our goal is to make sure that as organizations, we can put aside our individual organizational goals, but collectively make sure that our #1 vision of bringing quality citizenship education to all students across the world can be achieved. And together we can achieve this. Alone, we can only go so far. Thank you so much.